We're evaluating Scott Fitterer's first offseason as Panthers general manager, who we think will be available for the Panthers at the 8th overall pick. And Channel 9 sports director Phil Orban joins the show. This is the Crown Score Podcast. Welcome to the Crown Score Podcast. We are back this week after taking a week off last week. Reggie Walker alongside myself, Kevin Stewart. Reggie, how you doing this week?
I'm good, man. It's draft week. And you know what draft week signifies for me?
What's that?
The beginning of the rest of a lot of young guys' lives in terms of life-changing money, opportunity, all those things. But the best part for me, and this is going to sound crazy, it's the end of lying season. I'm tired of listening to the lies. Like, oh, I love this guy. I love that guy. Well, you can't love both of them, and you only have one pick. Like, stop lying.
Yeah,
the lying season is almost over. Thank goodness.
A lot of smoke's finally going to clear starting this Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern time with the start of the NFL draft. Well, it's Scott Fitterer's first offseason as general manager of the Carolina Panthers. He has filled a lot of holes that the Panthers have. He started out by franchising Taylor Moton. He solidified that offensive line by re-signing John Miller and Trent Scott. Pat Elflein, he brought into the fold. Cam Irving, of course, the Sam Darnold trade. It seemed like in his first press conference that they wanted to fill the quarterback position. David Morey's brought in at wide receiver, tight end Dan Arnold, AJ Boye at quarterback, Hassan Reddick, Denzel Perryman, Morgan Fox, and don't forget the people that have moved on from Carolina. Curtis Samuel has gone to Washington. They released K'Wan Short, which we haven't really heard anything on the K'Wan Short front since then. Stephen Weatherly, Trey Boston, Michael Pilardi, all gone as well. Going into his first draft as general manager of the Panthers, how would you assess the job that he's done so far to this point?
I'd give him a B, at least a B if you're asking me for a letter grade. And look, did he go get a franchise, quote unquote, franchise left tackle yet, right? In free agency or something like that? No, but he has addressed, in my opinion, he has addressed every position of need on this football team. Now, are all the names great and sound like they're going to be Pro Bowlers? Maybe not necessarily, but at the end of the day, we don't know how any free agency moves are going to work out until those guys get on the field. So I give a lot of credit to Scott Fitterer in terms of addressing what they needed to address in terms of you outlined the offensive lineman that they brought in. They made the trade for Sam Darnold. They added to the defense. Look, they had a lot of young guys. They drafted all defense last year. But you still have to have some veterans to go with those young guys. So you bring in a guy like AJ Boye, who's also kind of playing for the rest of his career because he kind of made some mistakes coming off the suspension. So there's that. You also bring in a guy like Perriman at the linebacker spot, been around the league a little bit. So he kind of understands how to do this thing. So those are guys that can kind of help as much youth on this defense as you have to take some steps forward. And look, I know a lot of people sometimes get enamored with kickers and punters, all due respect to Pilardi, but look, he's a really good punter, which means he's expensive. And so when punters get expensive, you got to go young and get cheap because that's one of the few places on your roster that you have to find a way to save money with. And that's a way to do it is getting cheaper with your kickers and punters.
And Joseph Charlton came in last year and it did the job pretty well with Pilardi out. I mean, but let's look at Fitterer. Like he has addressed all these positions of need. Cornerback, they really needed a corner. They got AJ Boye. Offensive line, they kept Taylor Moton, which was we've said it on this show. That was the most important move that had to be done at that time. He brought in an edge rusher to bookend with Brian Burns and help maybe develop Vitor Gross Matos in year two. He just signed the name's escaping me. The defensive tackle they signed last week from Tennessee. Daquan Jones.
Yeah. I like that move as well.
They needed interior defensive line help. He addressed that. He addressed the quarterback position. I think what he's done with what's available has been really good so far. And I would say a B is probably the fair grade to give him if we were to give him a letter grade. It's just because, the Darnold trade, a lot of people are still kind of hit and miss about it so far at this point.
Here's for me why I give him a B grade and why I give him so much credit, even though a lot of people may not love all of the names, is he's done it with a pretty tight budget.
Yeah.
And so this is a team that didn't have a whole lot of cap room They found a way, they finagled some things and created a little bit more cap space. But it wasn't like they walked into this offseason with $70 million in cap space or something crazy like that. So they ended up, Fitterer's done a really good job finding a way around the cap and finding a way to get some guys in here on some small money deals in terms of guarantees. And then they're going to have to earn their keep, if you will. And if they don't work out, it's not going to cost this team 4 or 5 years down the line.
Yeah, and if I'm a Panthers fan, I going into this draft, I would feel pretty enthusiastic knowing what he's done so far and knowing his draft track record with Seattle. I would feel pretty optimistic going into this that Carolina's going to get the guys that they need and the guys that are going to really take them to that next level and hopefully, to a playoff spot and an eventual Super Bowl championship.
I mean, that's the goal. Obviously, every team in this league, they're trying to win Super Bowls. And look, when you build depth, more than anything, that's what you got to have is depth. And one of the places that I feel like their depth has really improved is along that defensive front. You think about guys like, you got Christian Miller coming back as well. We talked about Reddick and Burns and Gross Matos and Derek Brown and Daquan Jones. Like all these pieces. It should be a group that's healthy up front and generally in good shape and condition-wise during games to get after the quarterback and shut down that running game. And if you can win the line of scrimmage, you got a chance to win a lot of games. Yeah,
and I think Brian Burns' development in year 3 is going to be really important because he really he had a real breakout season last year, and he wasn't really playing with much help. I mean, Gross Matos was out a lot with injury, and he's getting double teamed a lot. And at the end of these games, he was looking pretty gassed. So if you can keep his legs fresh, it's just going to just further his development even quicker.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
But the next acquisition that this team makes will be on Thursday night at the 8th overall selection in the NFL draft. I mean, we've done our mocks here. I mean, we're going to give them to you momentarily, but there's a lot of intrigue, I guess, to see what the Panthers will do at 8, just because what's going to go ahead of them, potentially at 3 and 4. So if we go through our picks right now, Reg, I think we could say 1 and 2 are pretty much spoken for in Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson, correct?
Yeah, I think so. I agree with that.
So who do you have going to San Francisco at 3?
See, this is where I think this draft gets a little bit intriguing because I'm not so sure that the 49ers are hell-bent on drafting a quarterback. And I know everybody says there's no way you trade up to 3 without going after a quarterback.
I told you that on this show.
But I think at the same time, Kyle Shanahan is not always the conventional wisdom thinker. He's not always the guy that does exactly what the rest of the world thinks he's going to do. I do think that there is going to be a heavy lean to go outside of the quarterback position. But I think at the end of the day, they're going to go quarterback and take Mac Jones. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I didn't think they needed to trade up either. But I think if you're going to trade up, I think they're going to go get Mac Jones. And maybe they feel like that's a guy that's going to have a gold jacket by the end of his career. Yeah,
I think Mac Jones is going to be the pick there too. I mean, it's almost like they've kind of played their hand a little bit or showed their hand a little bit. Although in the last week or so, I would say they're trying to put a little more smoke there and maybe dangle Trey Lance's name or Justin Fields' name. But Mac Jones seems to be the consensual pick there now, at 3.
They should dangle Kyle Pitts' name because that'll make people react a little bit. But I'm just throwing that out there.
I'll throw a whole damn wrench into the whole thing.
That's exactly right.
All right, number 4, Atlanta.
No, see, this is where it's going to get really, really.
This is where it's all going to go crazy.
Atlanta's awful. They're bad, and they need help everywhere. They really do. And now there's some scuttlebutt that some teams are calling and trying to see if they can get Julio Jones from Atlanta. Maybe Atlanta's looking to move on from him, just get some cap space and start to begin the process of a rebuild. And so I think Atlanta is very interesting. But I think what Atlanta's going to do is they're going to start getting weapons. They already have a quarterback. I think this is where we see Kyle Pitts come off the board at number 4.
I think that could be a very possible pick. I'd say they take Justin Fields because I don't see how you can pass up the chance to draft Matt Ryan's successor at this position. A lot of people think Fields will go later in the first. I saw Charlie Casserly had him at 24 to Pittsburgh, which I thought was just asinine. But I think, Atlanta, you don't want to pick up this high anymore, going forward, at least. So I think Fields will be the pick there. And it kind of throw a wrench into some teams' plans who potentially want to trade up to get his services. All right, Cincinnati at 5.
It's Cincinnati at 5, and I talked a lot and I thought about offensive line a lot, but then you realize they've got a couple of tackles that were installed there last year. They didn't play well, but they were installed there last year, and they've got some pieces in the offensive line. I think this is where a team starts to say, you know what, we're gonna, and it's also Cincinnati, right? So stick with me on the Cincinnati element here. And so I think they go way off the board and do something a little bit unconventional. And it wouldn't shock me if they went offensive line, but I expect them to go receiver here. But I don't think they're going to go Jamar Chase, which is what we're hearing a lot of. I think Devontae Smith may come off the board to Cincinnati at 5.
Well, that would be a very intriguing pick. He would. Who was the guy that they had that ran the
John Ross?
Yeah, John Ross, the guy that they just lost to the Giants at free agency. That would that would be an upgrade in that position for them. I think personally, I think they have to draft Penei Sewell at 5. I mean, just to protect Joe Burrow at all costs. I mean, the man's leg damn near fell off last year because they didn't protect him. It makes sense. I mean, I draft with sense. I try to think of this with some sense. But then, as you said, it is the Bengals.
There you go.
At 6, Miami.
See, this is now Miami, because they're young. They've got a quarterback. They've got a lot of spots.
You got to protect him too.
They've got to protect him too. And for me, this is where it gets interesting. Do they go offensive line, or do they give him, some more weapons, or do they go defense? And the problem with defense is there's nobody that really jumps off the page that needs to come off the board here. And so I'm sitting here looking at this situation and I'm going, this is getting really weird. And so for me, why not, right? Why not let them be Miami? But I think we see Rashawn Slater come off the board
here. Okay. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I have Kyle Pitts going here at 6. Just because I think Tua needs some weapons. I mean, you gotta protect your quarterback, but you also got to give him some weapons to work with. Yep. He did all right last year, but he needs some more weapons down there in South Beach. Detroit at 7 is could be a little bit of an intriguing pick here because we don't know. I mean, it's Detroit. They just traded for Jared. They traded for Jared Goff, but as you said, with some other teams, they need a lot of help.
Yeah, what are you thinking here?
I have Jamar Chase going here because I think Goff needs a weapon. They just lost Kenny Golladay. They just lost Marvin Jones. They're in line for a number 1 receiver.
They are. And here's where I'm wondering where their brain goes, right? Because they also need to protect the quarterback. They need to get better on defense. They need to do 8 million things with this football team. I mean, literally they do. Because we said we're going to go into this thing without the concept of trading, I don't suspect that they're going to trade either. I think they go. I think they look back to what they lost a couple of years ago. I think they go defensive back here, and they go Patrick Surtain.
So that would be 2 years in a row with their first pick going with a corner. That'd be interesting because they picked Jeff Okudah last year. Ohio State. I
didn't love Okudah last year, but there's that.
Yeah. So that brings us to 8, Carolina. According to your draft, Justin Fields is still available.
Yep.
So who would be the pick here for you?
It's Penei Sewell. It better be Penei Sewell.
Yeah.
It better be Penei Sewell.
It better be.
And we're going to talk to Phil Orban a little bit later about what they do here with this pick and how it could correlate if Justin Fields is on the board. But to me, I think you've got to go Penei Sewell.
I had them taking tackle too. I have Rashawn Slater here just because he's the next best option. It's on my board, which doesn't mean a damn thing. But
nor does mine.
Yeah, but I think let's go here. You got to fill that left tackle position. Yeah, it's been ages since Jordan Gross was here. You just traded 3 picks for Sam Darnold. You saw what happened with Bridgewater last year when he had no protection. You saw what happened with Cam Newton his last few years here with no protection, as you've alluded to many times in this podcast. It's time to protect your quarterback. You've got your defensive help in the corner. You've got your pass rush help. You're pretty good receiving wise. Now is your time to get your offensive tackle.
It is, and to add to that, right? I think that, and I've said that on this podcast. Outside of the quarterback position, the best player in this draft to me is Penei Sewell, and I know that's saying a lot. But
a lot of people say Kyle Pitts.
Well, and I get that, but a lot of people also love skill position players, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But at the end of the day, when you get an offensive lineman who can hold up really well on that left tackle spot in pass protection, and then absolutely maul some people in the running game, that's a good football player, and you want that. You need that in this organization, because at the end of the day, you're going to have to find a way to be balanced and be dominant running and passing the football in a division that includes the New Orleans Saints, who are essentially turning into more of a defensive team than they have been over the last 5 or 6, 7 years, with Drew Brees at quarterback. Atlanta starting to rebuild right now. And then Tampa Bay, you already know what kind of pass rushers those guys have, and guys coming off the edge like Jason Pierre-Paul, and then in that linebacking crew with Levante David and Devin White, all that speed, you better have guys that can neutralize that.
100%. And it looks like Phil Orban has entered the chat. So let's bring him in and talk some more Panthers draft. Now we welcome in Channel 9 Sports Director Phil Orban. Phil, thank you for coming on. I know you've been very busy lately. Channel 9 just released their partnership with Charlotte FC. And I understand you have a draft special coming up this Thursday at 7:00. What can the viewers expect to see?
You know, I'm so excited because, first of all, we're traveling for the first time in a while, traveling safely. We're driving to Cleveland, and we've got a little bit of everything. And the reason why this year is particularly interesting for me is because this is probably the deepest and most talented class of prospects from our area. Like, we always have a couple guys. I mean, we had Jadeveon Clowney going 1 overall a number of years ago. But in terms of, I mean, we have guys that could, we have 5 or 6 guys that could go in the first 3 or 4 rounds. So that's really exciting. So we're going to tell their stories. We're pulling on Joe Person from The Athletic to give us his perspective on what he thinks the Panthers are going to do at 8. We're bringing in Dane Brugler, who's The Athletic's draft expert, kind of give a sense of both what he thinks the Panthers are going to do, and we're going to ask him about our local guys as well. So we've got a lot of loaded stuff. We're kind of digging into Scott Fitterer's background to see if we can kind of get any guesses onto what he's going to do. So it's a lot of stuff, you know what I'm saying? And I'm excited to get out there and see what's what.
So Phil, let me ask you this, and look, I'm not going to sit here and get too deep in the weeds on high school football in Charlotte or the general area, but what has been your overall thought? Because I've felt like over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, to the point to where we're seeing more prospects right from this area involved. I feel like Charlotte and really North Carolina as a whole, high school football is starting to work towards closing the gap on some of the other states that are known as sort of football high school hotbeds.
I've been saying this for like 2 or 3 years because we had like a crop of really good prospects coming out then. But my very first assignment at Channel 9 was the 14 draft when Clowney went 1 overall. And I was like, wow, like, you know, we have the best player in America, and he's from Rock Hill. And that's when you kind of learn about how good that Rock Hill program is. But then, like you said, it seems like every year we get a couple of more guys. Like maybe we'll have a 1st and a 4th rounder and a couple undrafted guys. And then all of a sudden, like, we start getting more and more guys drafted. And I don't know what it is. I think there are a couple things. I think, you know, we have a lot of former athletes that choose to live here and raise their kids here. And those kids are getting to the high school level. I think the coaching is kind of an underrated aspect of Charlotte area sports. I mean, from Rock Hill up to Iredell County and everywhere kind of in between, we have a lot of like really good programs. We have a lot of really good coaches and a lot of really good facilities. So I think, and it doesn't look like that's slowing down anytime soon. I mean, this class that are, if they enrolled early, they're true freshmen, and there are a couple guys that haven't. Our Big 22 guys this season, probably the most talented guys we've ever had. And that's why it was such a bummer that the fall season was canceled, because those guys, just top to bottom, unbelievable talent, deep talent. And I could see a handful of those guys getting drafted in 3 or 4 years.
And let me just tack on to that, because I said this I had a chance to see Sam Howell in high school when he, coming out of Monroe. They were playing over at Olympic. They had a game over there, and I did that game for radio. And I said to myself, this kid has a lot of it, and he's going to keep getting better. And when he got to North Carolina, one of the things I said to somebody is, I said, I don't know if he'll win it, but he'll be in New York by the time his college career is over for a Heisman ceremony. And I think he's still on that track. And I think right now he's amongst that group of quarterbacks that's being discussed that would probably be near the top of next year's draft. And the way we talk about the importance of the quarterback position, Sam Howell could be in line and be one of those first 2 or 3 picks off the board next year.
I'm the biggest Sam Howell fan you will ever find. I mean, I've known him since he was a freshman. Since he was 14 years old. He still had the beard, which is wild. But yeah, I mean, the crazy thing about this thing is a year ago, nobody was talking about Zach Wilson. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And it was Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence, and that was it. So I don't know what's going to happen next year, but I think if things continue on their current track, I mean, why wouldn't you want a guy who's got a deep, accurate arm? He's athletic. He's more athletic than people think. He's great. Everybody talks about off-platform throws. That's why they love Zach Wilson, right? Because he's in the pocket, but he's not in the pocket, and he's thrown off balance. That is what I've seen Sam do that since his freshman year. And so the other thing that's crazy about him is he's getting better every year. So this will be a big year for him because he won't have that stellar running game that he had last season. But I mean, I'll bet on him any day.
To that off-platform, off-schedule throw, and this is just going to be me as a projecting scout here.
Yeah,
I think he throws the ball just as well and probably with a little more zip when he's moving than when he does stationary. And that's something I noticed from him in high school, and that continues. But he's even better at it now, which is absolutely scary.
And I think his decision making is getting better too, as far as when to, because one of the things he did struggle with last year was maybe holding it a little bit too long, trying to you know what I'm saying? And I think that's just a matter of growing as a player and as a at the college level. I mean, this is going to be his 3rd year, and he's going to be the full-time starter for the 3rd year, and he's just a junior. I mean, it's wild. His ceiling's up there.
I mean, he's really helped take that North Carolina football program to the next level. I mean, a level that they haven't been in probably not even my lifetime. He's been really good for them.
It certainly hasn't been
fun
this
to watch.
since the guy that's the coach there now, Mac Brown. It hadn't been this good since Mac was there before. So there's that. I mean, Butch Davis had them rolling in terms of prospects and putting guys in the NFL, but they weren't quite winning at the clip that they were when Mac Brown was there the first time, and Mac's on the trend to go back to that level.
And if you look, Brendan Marks just had a piece for The Athletic on their spring game, and he was 10 players to watch, and probably 8 of them were true freshmen, which is wild to me because they're just going to get better and better.
Phil, speaking of quarterbacks, I mean, you and I talked a little bit briefly about it when the Sam Darnold trade was consummated, that the Panthers probably aren't taking a quarterback at the 8th overall pick, but there have been some reports that they are intrigued a lot by Justin Fields, what he can bring to the table. If Fields is on the board at 8, and they're staring at Rashawn Slater in the face or Penei Sewell in the face, do you think Scott Fitterer, and he's really addressed a lot of needs in his first offseason as GM, do you think that he's intrigued enough that he might just go for that quarterback pick there at 8 and put a little heat on Darnold, or do you think they might try to just say, let's protect our investment?
I've struggled with this a lot. And one of the things that was interesting from Scott Fitterer's press conference last Friday was he said he was asked what kind of intel does he have on what other teams are going to do? How confident is he in other teams' plans? And he was like, you never know for sure, but we've talked to guys, we've talked to agents, we know what teams are telling players, right? I think they weren't interested in Mac Jones and reportedly not interested in Trey Lance. I think they were interested in Justin Fields, and I don't know if they would have traded for Sam Darnold if they thought Justin Fields was going to be there. That 3-4 that between San Francisco and Atlanta, they're going to dictate everything else that happens in the first round. And so I think if it goes, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, or Mac Jones, Trey Lance, everything's going to kind of fall. And then the other thing is, there's so much smoke and so much deception going on right now. So maybe they're saying we're interested in Justin Fields, and they're going to make somebody else jump up and get him. And then, let's say the Patriots jump up to 7 and grab him. Then all of a sudden, maybe Penei Sewell's there. So it's really interesting to see, to think about what's going to happen in that 3-4 spot, because you can kind of guess what the Bengals are going to do. You can kind of guess what other teams are going to do.
Right.
But I have no idea what Atlanta's going to do. If they go Kyle Pitts, the whole thing's off.
I don't think anybody knows what Atlanta's going to do. I think they're the biggest wild card in the whole first round.
Well, they are, because they can do whatever they want, because they're bad everywhere. The only thing I'm pretty sure they won't do is draft a quarterback, because the way the money is set up, they're on the hook with Matt Ryan for, I think, a couple this year, and then the following year.
Next year, it's like 42 mil.
There's like a ridiculous cap number. So that's the only thing I pretty much have surmised that they won't do. Let me ask you this, Phil. Speaking of quarterback, right? And we just talked about, would the Panthers go Justin Fields? And the first thing in my head is thinking, okay, how do you balance out that quarterback room? And I guess my question there becomes, if they do that, does that hurt the leverage in terms of trading a guy like Teddy Bridgewater versus having to cut him and eat the money? Because at that point, if I'm another GM, I'm going, now you got 3 in a room. One you just drafted, the other one you just traded for. 2 of them are on rookie deals, essentially, right? Because Justin Fields would then go on a rookie deal. Why would I give up any capital to you when I know you have to release the older guy and the guy you clearly don't want?
Yeah, I think, I guess my counter argument to that is, everybody knows that the Panthers are moving on from Teddy Bridgewater, and everybody kind of figured that out. You know what I'm saying? So
Yep.
Whether they draft Justin Fields or not, he is as expendable, I think, as he's been since before the draft. But I mean, that's a good point. I can't see a team not giving up. It's just a matter of how much the Panthers can get back, whether it's a 6th round pick or a 5th round pick or something like that, just to get something out of that Bridgewater deal. I think would be a positive.
We saw what they did with Cam Newton last year. That did not work out at all. They didn't get anything back.
Yeah, I think.
But that was injury. I think.
They're in a different spot. But
injury.
They were in a different spot and a different time, right? Where Cam was hurt and you couldn't work him out. That was the big thing that was an issue, because you couldn't get into a facility and work out for a club and be like, I am healthy. You know what I'm saying? And did the Panthers botch that? They didn't handle that great. But I think this would be different, because everybody knows what Teddy Bridgewater is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And there is a team that is interested enough in him to give up a late round pick for Teddy, kick the tires, and kind of see what they can do.
Yeah. All right. He is Phil Orban. You'll see him on Thursday night, 7:00, Channel 9, with the Panthers draft special. Phil, thanks for coming on.
Appreciate it, guys.
That wraps it up for this week's Crown Score. We'll be back on Monday, or I guess we'll be taping on Monday. We'll be back on Tuesday, recapping the entire Panthers draft. Reggie, how are we feeling going into this thing?
The good thing for me, when I look at where the Carolina Panthers sit, I think they're in a position to get one of the 3 players, in my opinion, that would make the most sense for them in Sewell, Slater, and or Patrick Surtain the second. I think one of those guys will be there for the Carolina Panthers at 8, so I feel really good.
Yeah, I think you're right. And then we'll see where they go later in the draft. Maybe they'll actually take some more defensive guys this year like last year when they went 7 for 7. All right. We'll see y'all next week.